Colonel Robert W. Cook, originally Second Lieutenant Robert W. Cook. My serial number, my regular RCL number is 088032. Now they've changed it over to using your serial number, but I'm still proud of my very low serial number. And I served in Europe, and I served in Korea, and of course served in the Arctic, and of course I served in the United States. And I was a soldier, I am a soldier, and I'll always be a soldier.
Hello, I'm Joe Holloway, your host for Eastern Shore Veterans, Their Story, Their Honor. Our mission for this program is twofold. First, to honor our veterans for their service to our country, and second, to record a history for future generations so we will remember the sacrifices they have made for our freedom. Today, my guest is Colonel Bob Cook from Salisbury, Maryland. Hello, Colonel Bob. How you doing?
Good morning. You call me Bob. That'll be
Call
fine,
you Bob.
Joe.
Okay. All right. Okay. I understand that you've got quite a record, a good record of service to our country. So maybe we could start with you telling us where you were born and raised, and a little history about your childhood and how you ended up in the service.
Sure, I'll be happy to. Well, I was born in 1926, which makes me 90 now. And of course, I'm of the 16 million people that served in World War II, there are only about 500,000 of us left, and I'm one of the fortunate few. But I was born in northwest Pennsylvania, and actually there's a Cooksburg, now a state park, called Cooks Forest State Park, which was my family's home. But because it turned into a state park, my family moved to a nearby town called Kane, Pennsylvania. Very small town, very depressed, then and now. But anyway, so I went to schools there and went to high school there, and naturally being a Depression-era child, I worked, I mowed lawns, I had a good paper route, I worked at a jewelry store, I did all kinds of things during high school. And I was a good student, and my parents were very poor due to the Depression, but they did their best for me. At that time I was an only child, so I did well, and when you get a little further along, I'll tell you something about the things that resulted in high school as a result of it being the pre-war years and the war years.
Well, back in those years, it was pretty much a given thing that most young men would go into the service. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. My high school class was about 125 students, about 60 some boys, and I believe that all but 3 or 4 of them were already ready to go right away as soon as we got out of high school. As a matter of fact, well, let me talk about our high school. Even before we actually got into the war in 1941, even before then, my high school even was on a war footing. Of course, all the National Guard troops, including the company from my hometown, went in 1940. The Guard was mobilized, but I was too young at that point in time. But my high school was like a basic training camp. Really, we built an obstacle course and had to run it. We did close order, this is in high school. We did close order drill, learned the manual of arms, ran the obstacle course. And our principal was a captain in the Pennsylvania State Guard, not the National Guard, the State Guard. Our principal was, and our gym instructor was his lieutenant. So the two of them were actually in uniform, even though they were high school administrators and teachers. So anyway, but we were pretty well equipped, and I was a Boy Scout too, so that really helps you when you go into the service if you have a lot of camping experience and Boy Scout. So the combination of that, we were probably better prepared to go in the service than a lot of people were, and we were young. That makes a big difference, being young and in good physical condition. But anyway, so in 1943, I was a senior in high school, and like many others, I wanted to get in as quickly as I could. So I wanted to be, at that point in time, I wanted to be an aviation cadet, a pilot. That's my aspirations. So like many others, in addition to the training we got at high school, by the way, we had good high school regular classes too, but our physical training, PT period, was always this military training. But anyway, aspiring to be an aviation cadet, I took an exam in 1943. Found out that my eyes weren't quite good enough to pass the aviation cadet exam. So in the summer of 1943, still in high school, I joined the Merchant Marine just to earn enough money to go to a doctor in Pittsburgh who claimed he could bring your eyes up to passing standard 20/20. So I spent the summer in the Merchant Marine, earned the money, went to that doctor when I went back to school, and started out. As soon as I finished high school, I went directly into aviation cadet training.
So the
well,
operation worked.
The operation worked,
How
yeah.
about that? How about that?
And as you can see, I don't wear glasses now,
Yeah.
but I've had some cataract
Yeah,
surgery
yeah,
that helps
good,
that.
good.
But anyway, yes, so I went to, well, they didn't get to be an aviation cadet till after you had done a lot of pre-flight training, but we were aviation cadet students. And so I did everything but flying the airplanes. And during World War II, there'd be the ups and downs in the demand for pilots. And I happened to hit the low point. What they do, they just have you waiting to get into flight training. Well, it got to be a very long period of time, and I've always been a volunteer. I always stepped up to whatever was needed doing. So anyway, I was really getting very restless just waiting to go to flight training. So I saw an opportunity to go to officer candidate school at Fort Benning, Georgia, infantry officer candidate school. So I resigned as an aviation cadet, applied for that, and went there. And subsequently, by the way, that was coming from the Air Force, just sort of marking time and taking courses and not having much pressure on you, to going from the Army Air Corps at that time into the infantry. That was like going from heaven to hell.
For the benefit of our audience, back then there wasn't a U.S. Air Force.
No.
There was the Army Air Corps, right?
Army Air
And
Corps,
so-
yeah.
And the Air Force came along later, so you were in the
Army
Army
Air
Air
Corps,
Corps, and then
yeah.
you
Army Air
applied-
Corps, then became Army Air Force, and
Right.
then in 1948, I believe, they established a
yeah.
separate Air
So then from there you went into infantry
infantry
officer
training at Fort Benning, Georgia, right? Very tough, very, very tough training, I say. So anyway, yes, that was 6 months program then, and was the first day I got there, I had my first flight in a military airplane was when they flew me from Moultrie, Georgia, where there's an Air Force base at the time, in a B-24. They flew me up to Fort Benning, just me. And that was my last flight for a long time in a military plane. But anyway, yeah, I went to OCS. It was very tough. Graduated right at the end of World War II, and immediately went to Germany as a 19-year-old second lieutenant. And believe me, 19-year-old second lieutenants don't know much, but they think they do. And so anyway. That was the beginning of my military experience, and most of my service was still all the campaigns, all the major battles were over, but we were still in Europe. Was still in a military position, and I went directly to General George Patton's Third Army. But I was trained to be as second lieutenants in the infantry or platoon leaders. They're supposed to be out front leading a 40-man, 48-man platoon. I was trained for that, but since it was the end of the war and they were sending the combat infantry divisions home, they didn't need new lieutenants in the infantry, but they needed people to run the trucks. So I was diverted to a Third Army truck company along with a number of other second lieutenants. So, and that was a harrowing experience. It was very, very, very difficult times right at the beginning of the occupation and the end of the war. So anyway, I ran a truck company along with some other brand new second lieutenants for a while, and through a series of circumstances I still don't quite understand, I was picked out of the crowd by a general by the name of Bresnahan to be one of his aide-de-camps. Aide-de-camp is a guy that, well, he's just a personal assistant to a general, and so. But I had some interesting experiences at that too. Among other things, my general had command of all the logistic things in Europe. So we had to travel around to all these installations all over Europe. And we traveled somehow. My general, the command that he had, acquired Hermann Goering, who was the #2 Nazi. He had a fancy train, and somehow we acquired that train, and my job was to accompany the general, and we usually took 12 full colonels, depending on where we were going on these inspection trips. The general had Hermann Goering's fancy car. I had a little booth at the end of that. And each of the colonels, of course, had a nice private room and another car or two. So anyway, that was, for a 19-year-old kid to have these kinds of experiences, an aide to a general, travel on Hermann Goering's train, all this stuff was quite interesting for a kid.
Now, what were you doing in that in that service?
As an aide de camp?
Yeah. What was his job?
Oh, General Breslin had, during the war, every army, like Third Army, Ninth Army, every army has behind it what's a logistical section, a long command. And that's the ones that make sure that you get the food, the ammunition, everything you need, up to the fighting divisions. And General Bresnahan had been the command of one of those during the war. And I forget which army he supported. But after the war, they combined all those into one and called it Continental Base Section, CBS. And he was the commander of that. So he had command of all the hospitals in Germany, all of the quartermaster, all of ordnance, which is automobiles and weapons, all those kinds of things, all over Germany. So, and what was my specific job? What he wanted me to do.
Did you have any interaction with the Russians? Did you ever get close to
Saw
those?
them, but never saw them. But they would observe us from a distance, and both. I was in Germany twice, both at the end of the war and then again in the 50s. And in the 50s, during the Cold War, saw them always observing us wherever we were with field glasses. And that was a very tense time in the Cold War was really cold.
You were in Germany, the war was over. Just over, and so you were probably involved in the rebuilding.
Oh, big time.
Of Germany, and
yes,
the Russians had taken half of Germany, and we had the other half, or Berlin, and we had the other half. And
there were the 4 zones, 3 ours, British, French, and then the Russian zone. Yeah, right. So yes, I was involved in that, and especially when I became a general's aide, I was involved deeply in a number of things. We had a lot of disciplinary problems in Europe, and occupations are always, everybody's over, we're going to celebrate now, and discipline is not good. So
discipline with the troops?
Troop discipline.
The job's not really done. The fighting's done, but the work's not done.
Oh, absolutely. And there was still rooting and shooting around too. There were still Germans, not many, but down in Bavaria and so forth. So we were still on. We still were our sidearms, and we were still armed all the time, of course.
Did you have any interaction with the German people?
Yes, interaction. That's an interesting question and a very interesting answer, because the troops that were in these truck companies were brand new, inexperienced kids, right fresh from America. Many of them not well educated, from the deep south. A lot of them, and we had all these these trucks that had been through combat. And our job as a truck company was to get those rebuilt so they could be utilized. And so our American soldiers, just didn't have the skills or experience. Where I was at that time was right near Dachau. Dachau was a famous concentration camp.
I was going to ask you about concentration camps.
Right, and when we emptied out let all of the prisoners out, we actually put the German SS troopers that were stationed there, that were guarding that, we put them in as prisoners right in Dachau. Well, my place in Munich, Germany was just a short ways away, and I learned that we could draw work details from these German prisoners of war. Well, these happened to be they were older men, of course. They'd been in war since the 30s. So what we were able to do, I would draw a truckload, or I don't remember the exact number, but draw these prisoners for a day's work. And this is amazing, the way it worked. We would pair off one of these prisoners with an American soldier to work together on the trucks. And our Americans were learning how to do these truck repairs. The Germans were very good, but they'd been around a lot. So anyway, that was very interesting. And you've probably read and heard this, but the Germans, as soon as, they respond to authority. I'm a 19-year-old second lieutenant, and here are these 30-plus SS troops. They were all SS troops because they were out of Dachau. But they would, very disciplined, they'd do everything and pop to attention, and they were no trouble and wanted to be very helpful. And they were just to have an American meal at the middle of the day was a big reward for them.
They were probably glad the war was over as much as we were.
Everybody
and a lot of
every German that I met was glad the war was over. I didn't see any, and of course there were no Nazis in Germany.
yeah, they disappeared, I guess. Yeah. So you're at this concentration camp. Were you there when they did free the
No, I
prisoners?
was later.
They came in later. So.
Right.
So you're getting your trucks fixed up, and you were talking about I guess no discipline with your soldiers. Were they trying to have a good time? Some of them. And
our American soldiers, they
yeah.
weren't trying; they were having a good time.
Yeah.
And it's part of the story. But the black market was the Germans were starving. They'd been hungry for a year, several years. But that summer of '45. And especially fall and winter of '45, they were hungry. So the currency, money, dollars, you couldn't spend American dollars, and the German money was worthless. So the currency, the money for that period of time, was basically cigarettes.
How about that?
And a carton of cigarettes was worth hundreds of dollars. A single cigarette on the German market. So our soldiers got their rations of cigarettes, and there was a pretty hefty trading going on with cigarettes and coffee and candy and whatever our soldiers had. But anyway, so yeah, I did have a lot of interaction with the German people, and then before I was pulled out of this truck company, which was in Munich, and I wasn't pulled out. I was reassigned to General Thomas F. Bresnahan, World War I hero. Been a captain in World War I and a general World War II, and an outstanding, wonderful guy. So anyway, I went there and spent remember the war. I came from this country where skiing is a big thing, so they wanted to organize a ski school and a ski team, and our general wanted to have a good ski representation, So I organized the ski team and ski school for our command. Went to a place called Garmisch-Partenkirchen and engaged in training ski troopers, and which led eventually to, much years later, being a skier and being a cold winter guy. And during the Korean War, I went to a place called the Army Arctic Indoctrination School. During the Korean War, we were terribly ill prepared for it, and we sent our troops to Korea from Japan and Hawaii without proper clothing and equipment. They suffered terribly. So the Army, in its belated wisdom, decided to have this place to learn how to fight winter wars. And so and they wanted all volunteers, of course, because you had to be able to ski and had cold weather.
And this is when you were still in Germany?
No, this is later.
Okay.
When I was recalled. This is later. I'm jumping around.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Anyway, so volunteers, and they had this place to experiment with winter warfare in Alaska, because we had to learn how to fight winter wars. And strangely enough, we were able to get the Finnish, as you may remember, the Finns fought the Russians before we got into the war, 39 mainly. But so the Finns developed, they were eventually defeated, but they really beat the Russians for a long time in spite of the huge tiny size of Finland, the huge size of Russia. But anyway, so we were able to get these had been Finnish officers. After they were defeated, they got out of Finland, came through Sweden, and we somehow got a bunch of these Finnish officers, and we made them non-coms here, sergeants here in the United States, and they were our teachers in this. And we would go in the field to learn how to, one thing, to build bridges across water out of ice and wood, and how you do that, and how you keep your weapons functioning in frigid weather. Anyway, it was a very, very tough experience. But this little certificate, this place is, we're in the field all the time at actually minus 30, didn't seem minus 30 degrees, didn't seem really cold to us at that time. So we were in the field. The way we traveled, we'd be pulled behind these over snow vehicles, track vehicles, and we'd ski behind them. It's called ski joring. We'd go 100 miles a day that way. Actually, we had to be in pretty good shape. But anyway, we were far out in the wilderness in Arctic Alaska, and temperature kept going down and down and down. Finally reached minus 74 degrees.
Wow. You had a thermometer that showed you that, did it?
I didn't, but somebody did.
You get through World War II, and you've got a kind of a break between World War II. Did you get out of the service?
Yes, I did. I had, as a reserve officer, young reserve officer, you were rotated home, but I extended, because I had this interesting job working for this general, I was able to extend my tour, so I stayed in Germany until 1947, came home, went back to college in Pennsylvania. I went to it's a nice little college, liberal arts college, Allegheny College in Northwest Pennsylvania. While I was in college, I was a first lieutenant by now. While I was in college, and doing very well. I was older, of course, two tiers of colleges, and the vets and the 18-year-old kids right out of college. And there were two pretty significant differences in our
So you were the old guy. You were the old guy.
I was one. Yeah, that would be 47.
Yeah.
I would be 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 3 or 4 years,
Yeah.
but a lot older in experience,
Right.
of course.
Yeah.
Then there were some other vets, but 47. A lot of the vets were ahead of me because they got home in 45. But anyway, yeah, I came back, went to college there, and I kept my reserve commission. Did a session at Fort Benning for some advanced training while I was in college. And then I was the regimental commander of the National Guard unit in Northwest Pennsylvania, 112th Infantry Regiment, which, by the way, is a regiment my father served in World War I. And the predecessor to that, my great-great-grandfather served in the Civil War, and way back. So we're a fifth generation of people in that. They called it the Bucktail Regiment back in the pre-World War I days, because a lot of deer up there, and everybody wore a bucktail under. Anyway, back to more current times. I was in college and doing very well, and being older, I was the president of my class and all that stuff. But the regimental commander came to me and said, "We got real problems. We don't have a good. Things are seriously messed up at the company in Meadville, Pennsylvania, which was right where my college was." Said, "We need a company commander there badly." So they talked me into. He was a good family friend of my family's, and he talked me into taking this company. So here I am, a senior in college, Mr. Joe Campus, and at the same time, I'm promoted to captain to take over this company. Summer 1950, I met my beautiful wife. She was exactly my age, 1 day difference, but 4 years ahead of me in school, obviously. The war, she was in school, I was at the war, at World War II. Anyway, got married that summer, and the Korean War started, and we were called up the very first day, so I became involved in the Korean War right away, this division, and they called up a number of National Guard divisions for the Korean War, and we trained at Camp Atterbury, Indiana, fully expecting to go to Korea, and there were four different infantry divisions that were called up at that time. Two went to, and I don't know how they made the decision. Two went to Korea, two went to Germany, and I was one of the, my division, 28th Infantry Division went to Germany. And I was a company commander there in Germany at that time, and then I became a headquarters commandant of the Infantry Division, which was redesignated the famous 9th Infantry Division, and I stayed there till I did a full tour duty there as both and I had some very interesting top secret, and I'll tell you, top secret is top secret. If I had lost one piece of paper, I'd still be in Fort Leavenworth in jail. Get us top secret clearance. They went all the way back to my high school teachers, talked to them, and just all kinds of things. So top secret clearance is really a very important level of security, and I know I had a couple of responsibilities as a very young top secret clearance, with a very young top secret clearance, and one of them was custody of course, during the Cold War in Europe, we had all kinds of operational plans for in the event of war with Russia, so every level had their plans for war, and my job at one point in time was to be hold the custody of those for a regiment and a division, and that was a very serious thing to take care of those top secret documents, which amazes me than what I've seen and heard on the news lately. I know that if I had compromised one top secret document, I would have been court-martialed and put in jail. And I know of instances where people have violated their top secret clearance, and they've been court-martialed. I read about it recently, some young sailor on a submarine. Anyway, it's a very serious thing. Yeah. But as far as having a clearance now, I think it's long expired.
Yeah, that's fine. And it's secret, so we can't talk about it. That's right. Right.
No, it's top secret.
Top secret. So.
The three levels of clearance are restricted, confidential, secret, top secret, and then above top secret, there's a special access, which I never had that.
Were you there when the wall was built?
Yeah.
Was it built when you went back, or was it being built when you? I can't recall when the wall was built.
It was no. I got I got back in '52. I was in Germany until mid-47, and went back in April of '52. So I don't know whether the wall was built. No, it hadn't been built yet. No. But the Russians.
I'll have to brush up on that.
It was really, really tense. And another thing, it was classified then, I suppose. It doesn't matter now, but we talk about atomic weapons. One of my companies, as a headquarters commandant, I had a number of people. One of my companies had a defense platoon, and that platoon was detached from being assigned to guard these atomic weapons, which we were moving atomic cannons in that period of time all over Germany. They were great big things on a crane, and of course, but they'd go through these the Germans had to know what was going on, but we did have atomic weapons deployed in the field in the 50s, and so, and that's, I've seen pictures, so it's no secret anymore, obviously. But, well, I don't know what, we don't have now, I don't think. I don't have the idea what we have now in terms of atomic.
None of us probably do. Yeah.
No, I'm not supposed to.
Yeah.
My top secret clearance expired a long time ago.
Yeah.
But
So
I
you-
did have some very interesting top secret clearance for a really young officer. It's kind of rare, so I got called on to do some interesting things as a 24-year-old captain.
You know, this is one of the things when I interview folks that served in Korea, or World War II, or Vietnam. What's interesting is I think it's hard it might be for the audience when they think these folks were 17, 18, 19-year-old
Right.
when they were doing this.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little hard to imagine that all this was done when they were 19. you know.
Yeah,
So
I think about that too.
yeah, it's
19-year-old, and I have the responsibilities. Well, it's supposed to be for 40 men a platoon, but actually, 19 years old, I'm commanding a company of 200 men
yeah,
and
yeah,
doing all kinds of
yeah.
responsibilities. And as an aide de camp, you have some
Yeah.
pretty serious duties working
Right.
for a general. I mean,
It's,
really.
it's amazing when you sit back and
Yeah.
just think about that. So, did at your second tour, when you went to Germany the second time, did you get to take your family with you?
Not at the time, but later, I was unaccompanied for better part of a year. But then late at the end of I went over in April 1952, and my family did come in just about Christmas time of that year. So I was over there about 8 or 10 months without them.
Now,
It's tough being when you're married and have small kids.
Oh, yeah.
It's tough on the ladies, especially. Boy, I tell you, my wife. I've been thinking about when we were really thinking about the things she had to put up with is really tough, you know, and your husband's away, you got small kids.
Right, right.
But anyway, yes, they did come over
They got to
for
come over.
a couple years, and that was a nice experience for both of us.
How many kids did you have?
Pardon me?
How many children do you
Oh, at that point we had two little girls.
have?
My wife, oh gee, I tell you, Army wives, Army wives, Army wives for the rest of their lives. But anyway, she had to get, those two little girls were 3 and 2 at the time. Yeah, 3 and 1, 3 and, well, 3 and 2, something like that. From Knoxville, Tennessee, where I'd been stationed with the University ROTC, up to New York and get them on a boat, those two little girls and herself, and get across on a, well, they didn't fly them over then, they came on a boat, and then on a train from Bremerhaven, which is the port there in Germany, all the way down to where I was. And I was in the, I remember, I was in the field at the time she got to Europe with my troops, with my division. So I wasn't able to meet her. So I remember one of my driver at the time, his name was Corporal Hastedt anyway. Hastedt met her, and by then I had quarters, which were, I was in quarters which were converted German barracks, but they were very nice. We had a nice apartment. More senior officers had houses that had belonged to wealthy Germans, but it was very satisfying. Anyway, my wife and I, and she loved to ski, so shortly after we got there, I took her on a second honeymoon, and we went skiing for a couple days.
Good. So you were there in Germany. They were rebuilding Germany as far as trying to get the economy back up and things. Is that basically what America?
Yeah.
And plus, we were guarding the line, I suppose.
Yeah.
But,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We weren't. My particular unit wasn't. We were a combat division, and the Cold War was cold but very, very hot. I mean, you know, we were face to face. I was in, even though my family got over, my division was in the field. I think it was 270 days out of 365 deployed in the field in combat positions up against where the Iron Curtain, the Russian front, faced. And that was all the time. So no, but actually in '52 things were still a mess. Actually, I remember in Stuttgart there were still smoldering ruins in 1952, still, and the rebuilding hadn't really gotten started yet then. I've been back many times to Europe since. My wife and I loved to ski, so for years we'd go there to ski in Austria, and I'd see beautiful now, all those cities that were demolished, Stuttgart and Munich, and they're beautiful, but 52, in the early 50s, they hadn't really gotten they were starting to rebuild.
How about your interaction with the German people in the 50s?
Oh, really, very good. Actually, there's a headquarters one experience as a headquarters commandant of this division. I had all kinds of responsibilities, but one of them was to the German German American Youth Organization. We tried to establish good relationships through German kids, and also I was asked. During the fitness occupation, we tried to have Boy Scout activities all over Europe for the kids that were there in the occupation, And so I started a Boy Scout troop, and this town is called Gerping, which is just south of Stuttgart. Our division headquarters had been a Luftwaffe, German Air Force airfield during World War II. Anyway, I got a Boy Scout troop going. I couldn't run it, but I had a wonderful young sergeant who happened to be a Mormon. As you may know, the Mormons support the Boy Scouts hugely. So I had him doing the Boy Scouts, but then I had these German American youth programs. So my troops, I had, and I don't know where we got all the material and everything, but we actually, in this little town of Gerpingen, my American troops, my soldiers, and however, we built a really nice pet playground in the middle of the city.
How about that?
Gerpingen, so we had excellent relations, and of course the Burgermeister, the mayor of the town was there at the dedication of that and so forth. So yeah, that relationships were
Good.
okay with the German. There were still a lot of German communists around, but they were pretty quiet. But we knew that there were German communists in our community, and so we had to be a little cautious about our security.
Right. Well, that's so you get through Germany. Did you get out of the service then? Did you retire from
No,
the
I
service,
came
or?
back. No, I had so much time now, and I loved the service. I up till now I'm a reserve officer, but I applied for a regular Army commission, and when I was coming back, I was headed my detail. I was supposed to go to Fort Lewis, Washington, to become the operations officer of the S3 of the famous 5th Cav. But en route, I went. My wife's aunt and uncle lived in Knoxville, Tennessee, and he was a professor at University of Tennessee.
Quit banging everybody.
So we went through to visit there, and I still didn't have my college degree because I had been called up to active duty in my senior year, and had to have a college degree. So anyway, they had a nice dinner and at UT, and they had my professor uncle had invited the military guys in the ROTC there, and they desperately needed somebody, and so instead of going on to Fort Lewis, my orders were changed, and I stayed at the University of Tennessee for several years, got my degree, taught military science, and it was a good experience. And then I went to Korea from there.
Okay.
And in Korea, I had general. I'd been with troops, commanded troops all the time up till now. But in Korea, I had a general staff assignment. I was a deputy G1. That means that deals with personnel and administration.
And what year did you go to Korea? What year?
Not until '58.
58 you went
Yeah.
to Korea. Okay.
So anyway, I had an assignment with the 8th Army headquarters in Seoul, Korea, and spent a year there, and I got very, very ill there. I'm ashamed that I wasn't wounded in combat, but I was sick and very ill. I was in the hospital a couple of months at 121st evac. I love to watch the MASH program because it reminds me of my Korean days. But anyway, then I was evacuated to Walter Reed Hospital, and there several months, and then retired. But I made a recovery over a period of several years. I got well, but I'd already been retired. So then I stayed on and worked on my doctorate at the University of Tennessee, where my family was. Taught there for a couple of years. I'm an ABD. I never did get my doctorate, everything all but dissertation. And so then I taught there a while and came up to the University of Delaware and taught and did a lot of economic development research. I was very interested in economic development. And so then I went to Washington with a big consulting firm for a while. And then somebody in Salisbury, actually it was a professor of, what was at Salisbury State Teachers College, the Purdue School of Business now consisted of one man back then, and the whole school was 600 and some people. But anyway, so I was asked to come here and start the Greater Salisbury Committee in 1967 after having been retired for a few years. So, and I came down and met with Oh, Frank Perdue was one of the guys, Avery Hall and Bill Morgan, the Pepsi-Cola, Morgan Hazel's grandfather. And I was impressed with what I saw here. I loved these folks. So I came here in September 15 of 1967.
Moved your family here.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was,
Yeah.
they actually they brought, without my knowing it, they brought my wife down on a tour. I came from Washington on a plane to meet with a committee in the old hotel, One Plaza East. Now I met with a committee of 10 people, Frank and all the people I just named, and at the same time. They invited my wife down, and Buddy Hadda, who was a realtor, that's Frank and Henry's father,
Right.
gave her a tour of the town and showed her houses. So anyway, uh, I came here in the fall of 1967, ran the Greater Salisbury Committee for almost 25 years, and then Dick Henson and I were very dear friends, and he asked me to be president of his foundation. So I did that for a couple of years after I left Greater Salisbury Committee. And of course, Warwick Community College was one of the things that we started during my tenure at Greater Salisbury, one of a number of things. And so I worked with the president of Warwick raising funds for a few years. And I've just, and you know, but before we end this, I do have a couple of things in addition to my 74 below zero. These pictures are kind of something that's kind of nice. I told you I get this soldier's medal, which is a pretty high heroism decoration. This is a picture of me getting the medal pinned on me by a general by the name of Strickler, who, interestingly enough, he's a two-star general division commander here, but in World War I, he was a first lieutenant in my father's regiment. That's a regimental commander. He's a big hero in World War II. But this is interesting too. I took over this headquarters and it was really messed up. I mean, and this is 1952 when I came back to Europe, and that was really not a very good situation. So I had kind of a reputation of getting things straightened out and making things work. So the interesting thing about this is that this three-star general, that's Tony McAuliffe, the guy who said nuts in the Battle of Bastogne.
Okay, yes, I remember.
And my general, division commander at that time, is the one behind him, and that's me. And these fine-looking troops are the honor guard, which I was a part of. And I had about 1,000 troops, but we had this defense platoon. We had them shaped up as an honor guard, and I'm a great believer in discipline. And discipline means just like General Patton said in the movie, he made his troops wear neckties and their helmets all the time. I was kind of a junior enthusiast of believing in strong discipline, so I got several outfits straightened out during my military
who was
career.
this?
And that's me.
That's you. All right. Yeah.
That's a much younger guy.
You were a fine-looking soldier there.
Thank you.
You really were. Yeah.
Thank you.
Why did you receive the soldier?
Well, the soldier's medal is this medal that I'll just read it. It's a Colonel Cook was and is extremely proud of his soldier's medal. The soldier's medal is awarded for non-combat bravery while risking his life for others. And went on I was training troops, and I saw this guy up in one of these on a high voltage tower. I heard this bang and looked around and saw this guy hanging in his safety belt, swinging in and out of this big transformer, and every time he'd hit it would go zzz, and it'd spark, and his clothes were on fire. And the emergency department came, and they wouldn't. Those guys, they would not go up that tower. They had a fire truck there and a ladder truck. But people were supposed to do it wouldn't do it. So I got angry that nobody was doing anything. So I climbed up and got the guy away from the transformer, and I had a fire extinguisher, and I put his burning clothes out and pulled him partway down the ladder. And I had his burning clothes and stuff fell on my face, so I was blind for I couldn't see for a couple of days. Anyway, so I just did it because, well, it just had to be done. I mean, nope, couldn't leave that guy hanging there. And so anyway, he lived for quite a while after that, and I heard much later from somewhere that he actually died months or a year or so later as a result of, injuries from his kidneys or something being burned, fried. But anyway,
Now, where was this when this happened?
when
Where were you at?
that's when I was training troops at Camp Atterbury just before we went to Germany.
Oh, okay.
Training troops there. Yeah, that's the medal there, and that's the certificate, and that's a picture of my family from Pennsylvania came down for the award. General Strickler. That was a regimental parade. 3,000 troops formed up, and I got that medal there. And my dad was very proud of being a World War I soldier, and of course, there's my wife and our first baby. And
You were talking about discipline. You grew up in a small town, went into service fairly early in your life. Well, most people do, I guess. And through your life, what you've been through, what do you think of today, the society? How do you look at it, and the lack of discipline, not just military, but just in general society?
Well, first of all, I have to address, because I love the military, there's an old saying, I was a soldier, I am a soldier, and I will always be a soldier. I am absolutely devastated by what has happened to our armed forces, and especially the Army, of course, since that's my first love. But we've cut it to way below, in my opinion, its readiness, and all of the social experimenting. The mission of the Army is to close with and destroy the enemy by fire and maneuver. Well, that's the infantry. Soldiers are supposed to be fighters, to fight the enemy when called upon to do so, and train hard to be able to do so when they're not actually fighting the enemy. And all this social experimentation, and I think it's weakened our military. And basically, a good example is when I went to college. I mean, it was pretty standard. I always wore a sport coat and slacks and shined my shoes and so forth as a student. And I don't have to tell you to look at what students today. Anyway, I just think there has been a general erosion of the things that are the values that I and my generation and my friends here now, my friends now still hold those same values. The people that I work with, and I do continue to work all the time with Salisbury, with Warwick and the Salisbury substance abuse, well, they call it something different now, the Housing Board and the Water Transport Committee, Community Foundation. Those are all things I've worked with over the years. And of course, I'm very proud that during my tenure we started the Warwick Community College, one of the founders, and started Community Foundation, which, as you know, now has over $100 million in assets and gives $5 or $6 million to charity every year. And the Water Transport Committee is very important to this community. I always say and I founded that and ran it for quite a few years. Well, we had an executive director, but I sort of ran it for quite a few years. Anyway, I like to tell people in this community, but for the navigable waterways here, which are 14 feet deep, as supposed to be, and allow major traffic here, if it weren't for that, we would freeze to death in the dark with empty gas tanks. That's how critical water transportation is to us.
Yeah. You know, I talked in my previous interviews, I've talked to folks that's in the service. Some of them seen action, some of them hasn't. but none of them, I don't think there's been a one that I've talked to that said they wouldn't do it again if they had the chance, or that they wouldn't trade their experiences for anything in the world. You know, it made them better people. For what they
Absolutely.
went through.
I love the service, and if I weren't 90 years old, I'd re-enlist today.
Yeah. And when you got done with your service, you came back and continued your service to the community.
Yeah, that's
you know?
right. And actually, back in the 80s, I think it was, even though I was 60 by then, the state of Maryland had State Defense Force, State Guard, and I was asked to, I formed a training command at Fort Meade, along with another colonel that's still a very dear friend of mine, younger, he's a Vietnam era colonel. But anyway, we ran this training command at Fort Meade for several years. So my military experience extended even beyond my active duty time. So I went back and trained troops, and I loved that. I loved to train soldiers. So anyway, no, I would give my life. Almost did a couple times for this country and for the soldiers that I love so much.
Well, you've got quite a record since you moved to Salisbury. Greater Salisbury Committee, Warwick, Community Foundation. What are you working on now? I know you've not quit. You said you had.
No, really, one of my big interests and working Greater Salisbury has taken on as a project, but a few of my very close friends, Tom Evans, he's a Henson trustee, and Walt Moore, Appy, and Jack Heath, who's now the county council, and I. These are the kinds of men that I pride myself to be friends with, and others of that. Tony Sarbanes, who's a retired general, those kinds of folks. But anyway, the kids, and I know it's not a flattery, the kids at risk are a thing that I'm concentrating my effort on and trying in many ways to work with. Obviously, I've been big in the Boy Scouts for all my life, since 1938, and I believe they perpetrate great values. This book has a page on my Eagle Scout and Boy Scout experience. And the YMCA, I've been active with the Y, but there's so many efforts. What I concluded with my friends was that there's so many efforts, there are so many diverse efforts to try and help these kids, and there's no coordination. So it just seemed that we needed a coordinating effort. So where you'd bring the schools and the Boy Scouts and YMCA, the law enforcement, all the dozens of camps we have. I'm a great believer if we could get all these boys to camp for a couple weeks or a month every summer, boys and girls, that would make a difference in their lives and give them a reorientation on their future. So there's a lot of effort going on to help, quote, kids at risk. I wish there were a better name. But as you know as well as I do, Joe, the school, there's a lot of difficulties with our kids in the community, and that's a big problem. And I did sort of initiate that effort, but I'm still trying along with that, and still busy with the housing and Warwick. So I keep. It's not hardly a day goes by I don't have a meeting with one of these groups or various efforts.
Well, God bless you for what you do.
Well, thank you, and God bless you too.
Yeah, so it's interesting, these interviews, what people actually do when they get done with their service to their country. Most of them keep on doing more at home.
Absolutely.
I was talking to a gentleman interview a few weeks ago, and he's very involved in his church and the youth programs out there, and he's also a Maryland State Trooper. So, his service carried on to his career, and his career carries on to trying to help the youth of the community. So, anyway.
Do we have time for one more anecdote?
Yeah.
When I was in Korea, I was a middle grade officer, and I was in this headquarters, 8th Army headquarters. So I lived with a group of 6 lieutenant colonels and majors, and one of we had several of them were devout Roman Catholics. So for some reason, they invited to we had a hooch, a place, a house right there in Seoul, right on the military reservation. And he invited this Maryknoll missionary, and I'll never forget. Maryknoll, anyway, his name was Father Ed Moffat, and he was in Seoul for some purpose, but he actually was a missionary out on an island which was right on the border, the 38th parallel between North and South Korea. And as a result, that island, a lot of refugees came there, and a lot of people in severe hardship. So anyway, he stayed with us overnight, maybe a couple nights when he was in Seoul, Korea. And he was bemoaning the fact that he desperately needed some kind of a medical facility. So now we're middle grade, we're not top grade, but just by virtue of our positions, the 6 of us around this 8th Army headquarters, we were able to locate some materials, get them over to his island, and get him the help to build I don't know, I never saw it, but he wrote us and said we built a little hospital or dispensary or place to, and this was kind of a good turn, and nothing to do with our military duties. It's what we did at our off time and with our efforts while we were in Korea. So, and when I came home and retired, I had an interest in a drug company when we were at the University of Tennessee, Southern Drug and Manufacturing, and they manufactured a lot of things, and there were a lot of seconds that were just discolored or something. They were perfectly good. These were over-the-counter medications for the most, I guess all of them. But anyway, I was able to barrel up and ship back to him in Korea for several years the things that from Knoxville. So you know, I've always tried to be a Boy Scout, do a good turn daily.
I've asked you a few questions, and you volunteered a lot of information. Is there something that I've not asked, or something you would like to tell the audience about Colonel Bob Cook that I've not mentioned?
No, I think we've covered. I could tell you some bad things about me, but I'm not going to. I'm a sinner like everybody else on earth, but I do aspire to do the right thing every day, do God's will, do God's work. That's my, and whatever I've done, I could, you know, it's God's will and His direction, and I'm just grateful that I've been given an opportunity to serve both in.
Well, you've done a great job. You've done a great job.
Thank you.
Look, I want to thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for what you've done for Wicomico County and the Eastern Shore.
Okay, George.
It's been good.
Been an honor and a privilege.
Yeah. You mentioned being in the Arctic, and you mentioned a little bit about it. You went to Alaska and served a term in Alaska. Okay. What, you trained there?
It was a combination of our mission was to learn how to. This was an outgrowth of the terrible way our troops were sent into Korea, and better late than never. The Army formed this place to study and determine how to fight winter warfare in Alaska. And there's a place, it's one of the coldest places on Earth, called Big Delta, Alaska, and we went there. And I mentioned we had former Finnish officers as our mentors, and we had experienced World War II American officers who had been in the 10th Mountain Division, and of course I was an experienced skier and had trained people, as were you had to be able to ski because you were being pulled behind we called them weasels, over the snow vehicle. But anyway, we learned a lot of things. First of all, you can't fire a weapon that has even the slightest amount of grease on it or any lubrication. It'll just freeze. So you have to have your weapons very dry, and even then sometimes it's difficult to get them to fire. Of course, batteries are just useless unless you keep them heated all the time. So your vehicles it's very difficult. You can't stop a vehicle ever. You have to keep it running. Of course, frostbite we had to be very careful about frostbite at well, like I say, 30 below wasn't even real cold to us. When it gets below 50 below, it gets, there are several things happen, and I noticed when it gets below 50 below and you're isolated with a small group. There were a small group of us out in the hundreds of miles from anywhere. We'd ski jord a couple of days, and we were on some lake, and there were some tanks. We were taught how to build a bridge over a lake with by cutting down brush and then getting some water. It's hard to get water in the Arctic too. You have to drill down with a drill through 4 to 6 feet of ice or some incredible. Anyway, you build a bridge across the ice by throwing branches on and pumping water on it, so you make it like concrete with frozen water and branches. So we learned that. We learned how to keep tanks working, keep how to maneuver, and of course we wore the white ski clothing that you wear in supposed to wear in winter combat. And we had we tried all kinds of different foot gear to keep from freezing, and different kinds of. Our mission was to learn how to keep able to fight in very, very cold temperatures, and it was tough. I mean, 74 below zero. We had one. Here's a little older guy, Lieutenant Colonel. He shouldn't have been there anyway. He wasn't. Anyway, he lost his foot in this extreme cold. My ears peeled for years and years from frostbite, but I didn't suffer any really grievous problems. But you get down to 74 below zero, strange things happen.
I can imagine. I know what it's like around here when it's zero and the wind blows. You know, that's probably as bad as I've ever seen.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know what I would do now, obviously, because I don't like cold weather, especially. I don't mind it like some people do, but I don't care to go to 74 below anymore.
Thank you for watching Eastern Shore Veterans, their story, their honor. If you would like to share your story and be a guest on our program, please contact us at Pack 14. Call or email, and we will be honored to chat with you on Eastern Shore Veterans, their story, their honor. Thank you.